Hi again, everybody, and welcome back to Utopia. You know, each week we like to take you outside to the places that make Utah so special, unlike anywhere else on Earth. And this week, we continue that journey. Have you heard of Utah's Grand Canyon? In the San Rafael Swell, there's another Grand Canyon, and you can ride your bike around the rim. It's called the Good Water Rim Trail, and we'll take you on that ride a little bit later. But first, our lead story. And it's tough to watch. There's a method of tree removal utilized by government agencies that's raising the landscape. Is there any proof this technique works? Here's Sean King with our story on chaining.
What you are currently seeing is a 20,000-pound chain being dragged by a pair of 80,000-pound bulldozers across a forest of pinyon pines and juniper trees. We did not film this in some faraway underdeveloped country. This is Utah, and even though it is out of sight, it needs to be in the minds of every Utahn that cares about wilderness.
Chaining is a process where large anchor chain is dragged behind two bulldozers that are traveling parallel. As they travel through an area, the chain rips out or snaps off pinyon and juniper trees, leaving them just discarded in the wake.
Chaining, originally called cabling, has existed as long as tractors have existed. Documentation for chaining can be found as early as 1945. The chain is usually dragged in a U shape or a J for maximum carnage.
The pinyon and juniper are ecologically diverse habitats, and there are certain species of birds and other animals that rely on that habitat. And so when you tear out all of those trees, that is just taking away the habitat for them.
The BLM, or Bureau of Land Management, as well as the state of Utah, use this technique to alter the landscape. They call it treatment. We say treatment in quotations because even though that is what the BLM calls it, it is like treating a cold with chemo. We found BLM literature to uncover their justification for chaining. Interestingly enough, the reasons evolved with the public's reaction. To understand the real reason for this overt act of destruction, we must travel back in time to the early days of chaining.
They used to be more outright about it and say that what they were doing was creating more forage for cattle. In the 60s and 70s, it was pretty clear that that's what the projects were for. Public sentiment turned against that, and recently they've added all of these other benefits for wildlife and fire to sort of fill the gap and try and make the projects more acceptable.
The original literature describes chaining as a method to enhance forage and browse production, or range improvement techniques. However, this song was not winning public opinion. So the tune was changed. The argument for chaining evolved.
They claim that they do everything from make areas better for wildlife, to reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfires, to increase water quantity and quality. It's kind of across the board. They say these projects will do all things good.
We decided to visit a place called Hamlin Valley, where about 2,400 acres were being quote-unquote treated.
Hamlin Valley is a remote area in southwestern Utah. It's located west of Milford, north of Modena. It's a mixture of state, private, and federal land. The area we were in is on the west side of Indian Peak and is managed by BLM primarily.
Locals who support chaining have told us that the pinyon pine and juniper are invasive. Truth is, these trees were here long before Europeans arrived, and the pinyon pine and juniper trees are actually native to this area. They belong here.
I really want to come back and core this tree right here. This one, because this tree looks like it's several hundred years old. Look at the density. That's probably 3 feet diameter tree at the base. Just amazing. Gorgeous.
Jim's estimates were spot on. The Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance sent experts to Hamlin Valley, and they dated the trees as between 100 and 300 years old.
We were looking out across this area here to another place that was chained, and we were seeing enormous clouds of dust being kicked up by wind. We're going to see more of that, and that's going to be an enormous loss to the long-term health of this place, to lose by wind the key soils that are essential to support all life here.
One of the arguments that has sprung forth in recent years has been the fact that chaining can create more habitat for sage grouse. And while it is true that sage grouse populations are in trouble, and it's also true that some of this area is perfect sage grouse habitat, the fact remains that those areas are in the flatter, lowland parts of Hamlin Valley. And there are other methods for habitat restoration that are less extreme. They could use a bullhog to take down these trees and stop expansion into historic sage grouse habitat, but the brute force of chaining is the least expensive option for converting the most land.
Once you move up elevation into these persistent woodland areas that are essentially forests, there's very little evidence that you're going to create sage grouse habitat up there. Because the soils aren't suited for a bunch of sagebrush, areas have evolved to grow pinyon and juniper, and you can't just take out trees and expect some completely different type of vegetation to grow there. You end up with a disturbed environment, and then either invasive cheatgrass or something fills in, or pinyon and juniper come back.
We'll be right back with more Utopia after these messages.